Greetings. Welcome to our FIATech webinar. I'm Robert Weibel, your Senior Project Manager. And on behalf of all of us at FIATech, I'd like to thank you for joining us today for Interface Management Factors Influencing Capital Project Success. Today we've set aside an hour to learn from Kelly Maloney about this topic. Before I introduce our speaker, I'd like to remind you all that FIATech is a member-based organization with the objective of accelerating the deployment of technology in the capital projects industry. We have over 66 member companies and welcome new members. If you're interested in joining and would like more information or have ideas of topics for future webinars, please drop me a line at Weibel, W-I-B-L-E, at fiatech.org. And now I'd like to welcome our presenter, who is Kelly Maloney, a Senior Project Manager with CoreWorks for Interface Management. She brings over 15 years of experience with enterprise software applications for project management and information management. Kelly has worked with some of the largest EPCs and owner-operators to implement interface management solutions that service multi-billion-dollar projects with thousands of interfaces. Most recently, Kelly assisted in the implementation of interface management for one of the world's largest gas field projects. Working with the University of Waterloo, world-renowned for its engineering research, Kelly is helping to define best practices and tools to improve information process management in capital project execution. With a focus on risk management, Kelly is helping further define the interface management discipline and its evolution. Kelly has led, monitored, and educated organizations in developing approaches and solutions in interface management through various webinars and articles. I will turn the program over to you, Kelly. Thank you very much.
All right, thank you, Robert, and I want to thank everybody for joining us today. My name's Kelly, and I'm a product manager here at CoreWorks. I've been with the company almost 7 years, and for the past 4 years, I've focused strictly on energy management. I've had the opportunity to work with a number of projects on their implementation and deployment, which has been fantastic, and I've really learned a lot, and I'm hoping that I can share some of that information with the group today. So we're going to start off by providing just a definition of interface management. I just want to make sure that we're all sort of talking the same talk and we're on the same page here. And then we'll take a look at some of the challenges that are facing capital projects. The second component I want to cover today is a discussion on what are some of the project characteristics that are really driving the need for interface management. We'll talk about some of the tools and methods that are used on projects today. Kind of have a bit of a discussion on what's working, what's not working. And then we'll take a look at the project life cycle and when does it make most sense to start your interface management program. And finally, we'll wrap it up with talking about what I like to call the 3 critical success factors to your interface management program. What they are, how to implement them, and how they're going to help ensure the success of your program. As Robert mentioned, you can ask questions at any time throughout the presentation. We're going to save some time at the end of the hour to address those questions. So I did want to start with a brief description of CoreWorks, talk a little bit about the company. We're a software company that builds solutions for organizations that manage large capital projects. Using our software, companies have improved project execution by supplying their project teams with the tools they need to manage project information, exchange data, and collaborate to ensure the project success. We've done a lot of projects around the world, working with some of the largest and leading owner-operators and EPC firms, and really have a good mix of experience in the oil and gas, power, and mining industries. So to start today, I want to start off with a little bit about a definition of interface management. And really the importance of interface management has come to the attention of most organizations with the rise of mega projects, many of which have suffered and continue to suffer significant losses. Projects are continuing to grow in size and complexity, and that's really driving the need for interface management programs. If we take a look at the definition we have here, project interfaces managed in a structured, accountable manner through information sharing, collaboration, and ownership. I really like this definition. It is about managing your project interfaces. Accountability is very important in interface management, ensuring that everybody understands what their roles and responsibilities are. And then certainly it's also about information sharing and collaboration. When we talk about a project interface, what we're really talking about is the boundary between two parties or delivery teams involved on the project. It's really the point where the responsibility for a physical system or a connection is transferred from one contractor to another. All kinds of different interfaces will exist on the project. You'll have physical interfaces, contractual interfaces, organizational, environmental. But typically what I've seen on the projects that I've been involved with is that we're most often talking about the physical interfaces, such as structural steel connections, piping, cable interfaces. You'll have your civil and your electrical interfaces as well. So interface management is really a part of risk management. It's a tool that can be used to help mitigate interface-related risks to your project. And really it's about making sure that you have that communication occurring between your delivery teams, related to project interfaces that can be handled in a manner that will minimize risk and really provides the appropriate visibility to help deal with potential problems when they do arise. So organizations are facing a lot of challenges that are contributing to poor project performance. A major factor is the huge increase in project size and complexity. Projects are multi-year and multi-billion-dollar in cost, and this is significantly increasing the need to implement discipline and procedures. Larger projects are going to equal larger risk. Larger projects typically also mean multiple scope packages with multiple contractors involved. And very often these contractors are globally dispersed. Multiple scope packages are certainly going to mean more interfaces to manage, more risk for disconnects and misalignment of roles and responsibilities. And it's also going to mean that projects really need to implement better communication models and provide the tools in order to support that communication model. Larger projects also have more documents and more information to share. So contractors, involved in the project are going to have the means and the capability in order to share those documents and to share information about those documents and about the project interfaces. And also certainly capital projects are dealing with logistical and regulatory requirements that are maybe greater than they have been in the past. Especially when you're talking about globally dispersed projects where they have to take into account the regulatory and environmental requirements of the countries that they're operating in. So to manage the risk capital projects, projects are really looking at new technologies, new project structures, and new delivery methods in order to mitigate against the huge increase in both cost and schedule growth that they've experienced over the past decade. So I want to talk a little bit about, what are the project characteristics that are really driving the need for interface management. Certainly the complexity of your project. So are you dealing with new technology? Are you working in remote or hard to develop areas? Project execution with compressed project schedules. You have the design build time cycles that are more compact, and certainly the costs for schedule delays can be quite large. Concurrent engineering requires that independent teams work simultaneously on separate independent modules of a project. So both of these are going to increase the potential for interface error and the likelihood for integration problems. So complex projects and the complexity of today's projects is certainly a driving factor for the need for interface management. Do you have multiple scope packages? Are you working with multiple scope packages, which will typically mean multiple contractors? Certainly this is going to increase the number of interfaces that you have to manage on your project. And it leads to the importance of ensuring that you have a clear definition of your scope packages with regards to your project interfaces, to help ensure that you have no gaps or overlaps. Is your project globally dispersed? Successful communication and collaboration is really going to be key when dealing with multiple contractors that are globally dispersed. You're working with contractors that are on different continents and different time zones. So you really want to be sure that everyone's sort of speaking the same language and communicating in the same way. Is your project working with different types of contracting strategies? Very often we see projects that will have a mix of contracting strategies, and certainly this can add to the complexity of managing your project. And then the total installed costs. Facilities are larger and represent a huge capital investment, and projects can take years from concept to startup. And during that time, thousands of documents will be handled. Hundreds of people will come and go on your project. So if you don't have the programs and the tools and procedures properly implemented to weather those changes, you're really putting your project at risk. So these are some of the things that you need to take a look at. You need to evaluate your project, determine the right level of interface management that's required for your project. These are some of the points that you can take into consideration to do that analysis and determine that level of interface management. And when I talk about the level of an interface management program for your project, we're talking about the level of formality. So how formal do you need to get? Also the level of automation. So do you need automated tools in place to help support your project? And again, these are some of the factors that you want to take into consideration when making that assessment. So really, it's also you want to take into consideration sort of balancing, related but conflicting needs of a project, especially when it comes to interface management. But I think these also apply to any project discipline that you're managing for your project. You want to be centralized. So really, gone are the days of the single, contractor responsible for the project delivery. But you want that centralized information. You want everybody to be able to work off a common set of information. But you also need to make sure that you support global operations, right? So your contractors are worldwide. You need to be able to support that. So you want that central repository of information, but you also have to support global operations. Transparency, very important in interface management. You want to encourage that openness, communication, and accountability, but it's still very important that you maintain your confidentiality. You want to implement best practices and standard practice across all of your projects. And definitely learn from previous experience and implement lessons learned on future projects. However, everybody recognizes and understands that every project is unique. So you need to be able to deviate in places where it makes sense to meet the unique requirements of a particular project. And you have contractual commitments as well. Certainly your contractors have contractual commitments to the project. But when we're talking about interface management, we're often dealing with issues that are, lower level detailed items that are below the level that's defined in the contract. So you have to be able to take that into account and work those issues out. So it's about managing this balance and accomplishing it without the right tools in place and without the proper discipline and program in place can make it very, very difficult when managing your project. Talk a little bit about some of the benefits for interface management. Certainly it's about mitigating interface-related risk. And you're going to gain this through the early identification of project interfaces and then properly managing those interfaces through to completion. You're going to provide your team with real-time visibility and oversight. And this includes not only those people that are directly involved in the day-to-day activity, but also provide the management team with that ability, the oversight and the real-time reporting so they can at any time monitor progress and understand how the program is progressing related to project interfaces. And you'll ultimately improve project execution. You're going to have clear ownership of all your project interfaces. All parties are going to understand their roles and responsibilities and what's expected of them in managing those interfaces, which ultimately is going to lead to improved project execution. So a well-planned, well-executed interface management program will result in a reduction in the cost and schedule growth that mega projects have experienced. I want to talk a little bit about some of the current ways of that I've seen projects managing interfaces, and really the way you manage information and data exchange on a project can really make or break your project. If we start with email, email is a common tool, and certainly we could not live without email. But with regards to interface management, it's very disconnected and insecure. Project teams that are using email and email alone are really leaving it up to the end user to properly communicate, ensure that they're putting the right information in that email, and ensure that they're capturing the right information, asking the right request, receiving the right response, and who are they communicating with. With email, you're leaving it up to the user to determine who's the recipient of the email and who they should CC, right? Are they informing all the stakeholders who need to be informed about a particular interface or a decision that's being made? And often what we find with email is that you end up with a lot of cycles, right? So until you actually get the right information to the right people, that email can be routed around the organization and kind of do back and forth until you finally have that, all the information you need and get the clear and accurate response that you're looking for. So we have found that email is not really a good method on its own of managing project interfaces. And then, the other one I included in here, and I found this interesting, I read it in a document I was reading recently, was the use of FTP sites. And I never, recognized this before, but I guess it's a tool that some projects are using. Likely they're using this in conjunction with an Excel spreadsheet. But again, with FTP sites, it's really, they're very unstructured, they're hard to audit. Chances are you're getting information from a number of different sources in a number of different formats. The project team is probably responsible for, merging that data, to get that sort of a single picture of what's happening based on all this information that's coming in from separate sources. And likely by the time that you finish that task of getting all that data, merging all that data, and providing that information to the stakeholders and the people that need that information, you're probably working with old, out-of-date information, and you just have to start the process all over again. So FTP sites are really not a recommended approach for interface management. Then there's Excel, and everybody loves Excel, and certainly it's a great tool. I wouldn't discount it as a tool for maybe smaller projects, managing a smaller number of project interfaces. But certainly Excel can be very difficult to manage and maintain. It's not a collaborative tool. There can only be one person sort of updating and managing that spreadsheet at a given time. It doesn't offer that real-time visibility, so you don't have immediate access to the most up-to-date information. And there's often confusion with regards to, are you working with the most recent revision of the document? So it is great for a lot of things, and again, it's a great tool possibly for smaller projects or maybe the more cookie-cutter projects that you've done many times before, and you can manage those project interfaces with a smaller team. But certainly on larger projects with multiple scope packages and multiple contractors, especially those that are globally dispersed, Excel is not going to be a great tool of choice for the management of your project interfaces. And the last one that I wanted to conclude on the list is a document management system. And certainly CoreWorks has a document management system that we support. So document management systems are great at what they do, but they really were not designed for the management of project interfaces. And being able to have that collaborative communication environment that's really needed where multiple parties can communicate and share information with one another. So I've also discounted the use of a document management system. So there are lots of current methods out there. Some are working maybe more than others. And again, if you have the smaller project with a smaller number of stakeholders, Excel may be the tool of choice, or you may want to look at commercial products that offer a more automated approach, a more automated collaborative approach to interface management. So if we take a look at the project life cycle and try to understand where does it make most sense to start interface management, really what we recommend and what I have seen on very successful projects is that implementation starts early. It starts during the front end planning phase and certainly continues through to hand over to operations. During the early stages, I've seen it as a pre-planning tool where interfaces are identified along with scope delineation and definition. Identifying it provides a better way in pre-planning in the early planning stages of possibly identifying early on areas of high risk to the proposed solution. It is also going to help when contract award time comes along that you've clearly defined your scope of work. Contractors, if interfaces are included in the scope of work, contractors will have a better understanding very early on of the scope of work and the inclusion of the interfaces there, which is ultimately going to lead to better decisions down the road. During design, interface management is used for the coordination of technical information, preventing clashes in design. During construction and commissioning, you'll have interface agreements that will exist around key interfaces or tie-in points. It can assist in the construction sequencing to ensure that activities are completed in the proper sequence and the proper order. Management of pre-commissioning activities, right, to ensure that all tasks are completed in preparation of handover to either the possibly to the commissioning and startup team. So interface management is definitely a valuable tool through all project phases. We always recommend when working with a project that interfaces are interface planning and definition of project interfaces are done up front. It's often a feed deliverable, and it's certainly an engineering activity that occurs. As contract award begins and people get into design and detailed design phases of the project, they're sharing information regarding the design and drawings of those project interfaces, and then through to construction and commissioning and startup. All right, so I want to talk about the three key components which really build a solid interface management program. We have the business process, the people, and the tools. If we start with the business process, what this really is the creation and the execution of the interface management master plan. We'll talk more about this, but basically the interface management master plan covers all the roles and responsibilities of all the stakeholders involved in the program. It's going to document and describe the overall procedures and policies really as to how interface management will be executed and managed on your project. When we talk about the people, what we're talking about here is really alignment and getting everybody on board, ensuring that everybody understands what their roles and responsibilities are, what their expectations are, how they will communicate and collaborate with other delivery teams and other stakeholders. So the people and gaining alignment among all the people is a very important component of your interface management program. And then finally we have the tools. Every project will have document management systems, scheduling systems, scheduling tools and cost tools. But really they need to start looking at providing tools for interface management as well. How are you going to manage your interface register? How are you going to manage communication? Automated alerts, notifications. How are you going to handle escalation? So if something does go off track, how are you going to manage that, and how are you going to get things back on track and get people communicating and sharing information. So the tools are really going to be an important part to the success of your program. Now I want to talk a bit more about the Interface Management Master Plan. So again, this is really, it's a tool that's used to describe the interface management philosophy. It defines how interfaces will be managed, identified. It describes the roles and responsibilities of not only the delivery teams involved in the day-to-day activities, but it also describes the roles and responsibilities of the client, the project team, and other stakeholders. You can think of it as the rules of engagement. It's really basically the foundation of your interface management program. You want to ensure that you have a clear understanding of the project's objectives and goals as it relates to interface management, and also ensure that there's no interface gaps or overlaps. Right? So the master plan is a tool that's used. I've seen some very well-written interface management master plans, and then basically well-executed programs that are based off the interface management master plan. Some of the benefits that a tool like the interface management plan will give you is that it will help you gain alignment. We talked a little bit about the importance of gaining alignment across all the stakeholders that will be a part of your project and a part of your program. But it's really important that all stakeholders have a clear understanding of their expectations. So what's required of them? How are they expected to manage their project interfaces? How do they handle it if they identify new project interfaces during the execution phases of the project? Reporting, very important in any kind of program. What is their expectations regarding reporting? So what are the reporting requirements of the delivery teams to the project? And you also need to take into consideration as well the reporting requirements that the delivery teams will have to their own management, teams and users. Expectations regarding interface meetings. I've seen projects that use that have measurements and KPIs against attendance at project meetings. So every team will have interface management meetings. You want to set the expectations around attendance to these meetings, the frequency of these meetings, and how you're going to facilitate these meetings. So, and ultimately, the master plan is a tool that's going to help you, mitigate risk related to your project interfaces. It's going to help ensure that you have that ability to be proactive, that you've got all your project interfaces identified, and that you have a plan in place for the resolution and resolving any potential interface issues that do arise. And probably most importantly, that the roles and responsibilities are defined. I talked about how it's not just the delivery team's roles and responsibilities that are defined in your master plan, but also the expectations and roles and responsibilities of all the other stakeholders who will be a part of your program. And one thing that's very important too is that this document is it should become part of your project documentation and part of the project execution plan. So the second factor really hinges on, getting the right people into the right positions and fulfilling the right roles. For any interface management program, you're going to have a number of different role types that need to be filled. You'll have engineers, project management, and there's really going to be a real varied skill set that's required to support the program. Excuse me. You also want to make sure that you've got clearly identified all of the stakeholders that are involved, and ensure that these parties are not only recognized and identified, but that they're kept informed. The development of a responsibility matrix and a tool that can support the implementation of your responsibility matrix in order to support those notifications to all the key stakeholders is very important. You also want to be able to promote and regulate communication. So this is encouraging people to communicate on a regular basis. That open and timely communication. And this is part of the interface management plan as well. A section or chapter in that management plan is your communication plan. So what should be communicated, how the parties should communicate, and when they should communicate. So providing that common framework that can ensure that you have a common and consistent communication platform from which all your contractors can exchange data is very important. And then certainly alignment, making sure that everybody's on board, everyone understands their roles and responsibilities and what's expected of them. It's also important that you take into account cultural differences. Delivery teams are often located in different geographical locations, and you end up with different languages, different attitudes and beliefs. It's kind of the working environment of your project. So gaining alignment, with the people that will be involved is very important when you're working under, those conditions and basically working in a global environment. A lot of the times when we're talking about interface management, people are wanting to understand, well, what are the roles and responsibilities, and who are the key stakeholders that are involved in the program? And really, it starts with the interface manager or coordinator. He has a primary responsibility for the overall performance of your interface management program. This individual should have a strong technical background and certainly understand the project's complexity. Often he's needed to anticipate potential problems and be able to communicate breakdowns, interpret the potential impact of events, and basically be able to encourage resolution among the various parties. So your interface manager is going to be probably the one that has the most input into the interface management master plan. Of course, it would benefit him well if he gets the the buy-in and input from the other parties, certainly as project managers, as project engineers, but he has ultimately responsibility for the creation and implementation of the master plan. He will be the individual who will manage your online interface register, or if you're using Excel, your Excel interface register. But when working with an online register, this will be the individual who will be responsible for the register. He'll basically live in that register on a day-to-day basis and ensure that project progress is progressing, any issues are being addressed, and basically keep the project on track. He will communicate with the project manager and his lead engineers. An interface manager, is that single point of contact for the project and a key individual to the success of your program. But he certainly should have a strong team that's backing and supporting him with his project engineers as well as the project manager. The interface manager is going to be responsible for reporting progress, so he'll report up to the project manager, and basically be responsible for facilitating the entire interface management program. So he's really the champion on the project, and really success is going to depend on having a good, strong interface manager in place to manage your program. The other key stakeholders will be the project manager. He's certainly responsible for overall performance of all scope packages. He will report up to his stakeholders. And as far as interface management goes, he probably will play more of an observer role. It's doubtful that he will, actively participate in the day-to-day, exchange of information or any kind of, exchange of data related to project interfaces. But he will want to get in there and observe. So he will want to execute reports. He will want to monitor progress. And basically, he's responsible for, managing scope or managing risk to the project with regards to the scope, costs, and schedule. We also typically see project engineers involved, and I've seen, a lot of successful projects that, again, as I mentioned, that have a strong team backing the interface manager. So it's often the discipline leads or the project engineers who will assist the interface manager. They may even initiate a lot of the information in your system and certainly be responsible for reviewing and approving stuff. And they will also be responsible for identifying and qualifying risks to the project. And the last individual that we have here is Angela. She's our interface manager or coordinator on a delivery team or on a contractor side. And most interface management plans will stipulate that every contractor participating on the project must assign an interface coordinator. They have that single point of contact. And this person too should have a strong team of project engineers and discipline leads that are supporting him or her in his efforts. Basically, these are the people that are going to be doing the communication and collaboration in your system. And based on the tools that you provide them, they will be creating and submitting interface agreements. They'll be responsible for ensuring that requests from other delivery teams and other EPCs come in and are responded to in a timely manner. They'll certainly ask questions. They will be a part of those interface management meetings, so very important that their attendance at these meetings is required. And certainly they will report progress not only to the the project team or the owner-operator, but also internally into their own management team. Okay, and the last thing that I wanted to cover today was a little bit of a discussion on the tools that can support your interface management program. Most projects already have a lot of great tools in place for your document management systems, scheduling, cost control. But when we're talking about interface management, some of the requirements are slightly different. So you want to make sure that you have that central repository of information or that central source of interface information. Typically, this is done through an online register, and this is where you'll track and manage all of your project interfaces. That central source of information needs to be able to support your global operations. So access, via the web is very important. And that gives you the confidence and security in knowing that, your project team is all looking at the same information and they're all looking at the most up-to-date, accurate information. As we mentioned, make sure that your tool provides accessibility from all global locations. And again, that's typically done through an online web-based application. Most applications only require the use of a browser for people to get on and access the system, which is really great. Kind of long gone are the days where everybody had to have a system installed on their computer in order to access and communicate. You want to make sure that you have a system that enables that information sharing and collaboration. So promoting that open communication and online sharing of information is very important. But don't forget confidentiality. So most automated software tools today can support confidentiality. You may have a contractor who's got some proprietary information, or that you just want to manage communication in a special way with that particular contractor. So confidentiality is very important, even with online registers and full visibility. You also need to take into account the confidentiality when required. You want tools that can support the business rules and processes that you put into place. Again, that goes back to your interface management plan. So how are you going to encourage communication? What are your business rules? What kind of forms are you going to have in place, and what kind of data do you need to capture? So that's all about the forms, the electronic forms, and the workflow that's going to back those forms. How do you implement that? What does the workflow look like? What kind of reviews and approvals do you need? Can the tool that you're looking at support those business rules and support the reviews and approvals that are required? You also want to make sure that you define the roles and responsibilities, and again, that's typically done through a distribution matrix or a responsibility matrix. And again, can the tool support that? Do the forms and the workflow back the communication plan and the distribution matrix that you put into place? Alerts are very important in any system, any discipline. but you want to take into account or take under consideration the escalation and notification. So if something is, overdue, how are you going to handle that? Who should be notified? Who should be alerted? If contractors are not playing nicely with one another, they're not sharing information, they're not communicating, how are you going to be aware of that? You don't want that situation where, it's just disregarded and people don't follow up and the information is not communicated, not shared, and it's not until 6 months later that you realize you've got a problem and nobody did anything about it. So you want to make sure that you can implement with the tool of choice those escalation and notifications to keep everybody informed and everybody on the same page. KPIs, so key performance indicators. How do you want to measure progress? How do you want to measure performance? Very important that you keep the entire team aware of progress, right? It's all about ensuring that progress is being made, communication is happening. So in any system, you'll have dashboards and reports that can support that visibility of progress and status updates. And then if this is applicable to your project, you may want to look at schedule integration. Schedule integration can be a key component of an interface management system. How do you ensure that everything stays on track and is aligned with the schedule activities and the planned completion date of your schedule activities? In an interface management system, you're tracking the day-to-day communication and collaboration amongst your contractors, but how can you be assured that remains in alignment with your schedule? We work with many customers where we've made recommendations about how do you do schedule integration and what do you integrate and at what level do you get to? And really we've recommended that you want to integrate your high-risk interfaces into your schedule. Maybe you do that through milestones and you're tracking your interfaces to key milestones in the schedule. And that could provide you with that alignment of activities and due dates. So you want to take a look at what is it, how do you want to implement schedule integration on your project? How do you identify a high-risk interface, and what does a high-risk interface mean to you? So these are some of the requirements of an interface management system, some of the things that you need to think about when implementing the tool, and some of the features and functionality that should be provided in order to make sure that your project team is successful in the delivery of your project interfaces. So just to wrap it up here, projects are continuing to grow and they're continuing to become more complex. And that certainly is increasing the number of stakeholders involved, which in turn is increasing the number of interfaces that have to be managed. So it's very important that you provide your team with the tools that they need and the processes and the discipline in place so that those teams can collaborate and share information on these shared project interfaces. It's also, we encourage every project that we work with to treat interface management as a core project discipline. You want to make sure that you're capturing, recording, and tracking and managing your project interfaces in such a way that it's going to make it less complex, less troublesome. Throw away the spreadsheets and the email. Get a collaborative tool in place that's really going to reduce the complexity of trying to manage project interfaces. And then finally, we talked about the 3 critical success factors to a good interface management program, and that's the business processes that you put in place, and that's done through the use of an interface management master plan. We talked about the people and the importance of alignment and getting everybody on board with a good understanding of what their roles and responsibilities are. And then finally, we talked a little bit about some of the requirements of a good tool and the tools that you can provide to your project team to help them be successful in the delivery of their scope packages and the communication that's required of these shared project interfaces. So that's all I had for today. I'll open up the session now for any questions.
We have 2 questions that have come in. One is, can you recommend any sites or books for more information on interface management?
I'm sorry, Robert, could you please repeat that question?
Can you recommend any sites, websites, or books for more information on information interface management?
Yeah, there's a couple of things. There's a lot of good white papers out, so if, you know, and I'd be happy to provide a list of some of the better white papers that I've read on interface management. There's also a LinkedIn group that was started on interface management that's been very successful. There's a lot of good information and collaboration that's occurring in this interface management LinkedIn group. I'll just pop up the next slide here. It contains some information on the LinkedIn group. Well, I thought they had the URL there. But anyway, if you are on LinkedIn, there is a LinkedIn group on interface management. And I also know that there's a number of other initiatives underway with regards to defining interface management. CII, for example, is doing a research project on and defining sort of some standards and guidelines around definitions and best practices. So that's what I would recommend, really starting with the LinkedIn group on interface management.
Yeah, the site is http://www.linkedin.com/groups/interface management 4028563. And we'll post that to the FIATech website so you have access to that. One other question, it's the only other question I've got. Oh, actually we have one more that came in. On smaller projects, under 500 million, what should be used?
Again, I go back to the slide where we talked about the project characteristics that are driving the need for interface management. Even on smaller projects, if you have a small project that's very complex, and even a smaller project can include multiple scope packages, you may want to look at an automated tool. You know, if it's a smaller project that does not have the complexity, or it's a project that you've done many times in the past, maybe Excel is your tool of choice. But I think it really comes down to evaluating your project against those key factors and making a determination as to, you know, how sophisticated of a tool do we need to support our project. And part of that will be, you know, what level of automation is required. You know, so even on small projects, you can have a lot of stakeholders, you can have a lot of complexity, and that may require a more automated, sophisticated tool.
Okay, one last. Can you give any examples of the use of social media in interface management? Are we seeing some of that occurring out in the field? You know, people using Twitter and instant messaging and anything else?
Yeah, that's a good question. Actually, I haven't personally seen it in the projects I've been involved in. You know, CoreWorks certainly provides an online web-based application where we manage project interfaces and provide that collaborative environment. So above and beyond that, I haven't really seen any other types of social media used in managing project interfaces.
Okay. I do not see any other questions. One other question here. And that was somebody who joined late. Yes, we will have the presentation will be up on the FIATech website in several days, so that you can revisit it and re-listen to it. And another question: what can let me try this again here. What can you do to raise the profile of interface management within a company? That somebody has a very real problem. How can you make it seem important enough to the owners? Thanks.
Yeah, this is this question comes up quite a bit, and it always seems to be a hurdle that either an interface manager or even a project manager needs to overcome in order to identify the the need for interface management. I've been working closely with a project out in Calgary, and when they did their initial project assessment and study, they identified 10 key risk factors to the project. A lot of them were sort of the typical key risk factors that are identified on any project. But what's interesting is that interface management came back as one of their top 10 risk factors to the project. So there's research out there, that backs, our claim that interface management is going to help you, reduce costs and keep your project on schedule. If you've worked with other people in the past or other projects in the past, where you can identify where something went off track, and if you had a good interface management program in place, that risk or that subsequent issue and that could have been resolved. So I'd recommend that you go out, you talk to other interface managers, get on the LinkedIn group, find out what other people have done in the past, do some research, get the statistics, and promote it. Get the buy-in from your project manager. Write up your master plan. Show how you've done the evaluation. You've gone through the project characteristics, and your project has all of these characteristics, right? Write up a skeleton even of your master plan. Show them how implementing this program is going to help to eliminate or reduce those risks to your project. Is there any other questions?
Yes. One other question is, do you recommend the hiring of a third party for interface management if the owner organization is not well equipped?
Robert, can you say that one again?
Do you recommend hiring a third-party organization for interface management if your own organization is not well equipped?
Yes, I'd have to say yes to that. Definitely you want to have somebody in there that has the experience. You can even get a consulting, so an individual who's done interface management on other projects, right? If you don't have the in-house expertise, I would absolutely recommend that you get a consultant, a third party in who can help, educate and, educate not only the team that will be directly involved in the program, but also, do some education to the management team of the importance of interface management and why they need this on their project and how it's going to benefit them in the long run. So, yes.
And we have another question come in. When you were covering the tools for interface management, at the top of the list you had something like interface log. Can you identify what elements or fields you recommend to have in this tool? Would you recommend it include and track telephone calls?
All right, that's a great question. When we work with customers to implement their interface management program, we'll hold a workshop with them where we dive into the details, and the details include, what types of fields do we want to capture on our forms? How are we going to track our interfaces? What's the metadata that we're going to use to track interfaces? You know, is it area, system, discipline? You know, what types of information do we need to capture? How are we going to help you facilitate your interface management meetings? So when you're viewing that online register, do I have the ability to, you know, update on the fly an interface document with information from the meeting? You know, a phone call. Should phone calls be tracked as part of this information? So that's all the stuff that we will walk through a project when we're doing the implementation phase. Certainly, no system, no matter how sophisticated, is not going to you know, eliminate those phone calls and the face-to-face meetings. Those are always very important and should always be encouraged as part of any program. But logging that information then as a result of a meeting or a phone call is encouraged and very important. CoreWorks recently did a Lunch and Learn webinar series during the month of October. And actually one of the sessions that we held, we focused on that implementation and what types of, what data fields should you capture, how do you build that interface register. So I would recommend, you know, if you go to our website, you'll be able to access a link that will take you to those webinars. There was 3 in total, and they covered kind of the basics that we covered here today of interface management and what makes a successful program. And then in the second and third sessions, we dove a little bit deeper into, okay, how do I develop that interface management master plan? What are the components that need to go into that? You know, more detailed level information. And part of that certainly was, what information should I track in my register, and how do I encourage people to use the register and use it as a tool and to facilitate their interface management meetings. So I encourage you to go and have a look at those sessions. Number 1, we'll cover mostly what we covered here today, but session 2 and 3 will go into more detail on that specific question.
Thank you. That's great. We've got time for one more question, and then any other questions that do come in, we will answer. We will exchange them through email here and then answer back to the person who asked it. The last question I have is, interface management is an alien concept in heavy construction, industry.
Robert, you're breaking up there. Can you try asking those questions again?
Sure. Interface management is an alien concept in heavy construction industry. How do you recommend that we educate the people in this industry? Hello?
I'm not sure if Robert's line got cut there, but I think if you guys have any questions, I'd say post them onto that LinkedIn interface management group, and we can answer it there. If you guys have any questions, I'm not getting any.
Yeah, are you able to hear me now?
Hear me or not? So I think we're just gonna stop it here. Thank you for joining us, Kelly. And everyone at CoreWorks, thanks for having us, and thank you for allowing us to talk to everybody. Thanks. Have a good afternoon.
Thank you all.